Hello folks, in this video I'm going to summarize what we did in class on Wednesday, which was making a small web application. So I just wanted to make a video just to make sure we're all at the same place, and if there's any misunderstanding you can watch the video and let me know if you need any help. The first thing you'll notice is for this video I'm using Windows 8 as opposed to the Mac. Now on the Mac we had used a piece of software called MAMP, Macintosh, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. For this little demo I'm using a WAMP, a Windows Apache, MySQL, PHP. And if we go down here to the show hide icons, you'll see I have a piece of software called the EasyPHP. This is a version of a WAMP. It has Apache, MySQL, and PHP, and it lives on Windows. Now, the first thing I want you to do, or the first thing I want you to watch me do, is I'm going to choose Explore. You'll remember from class that when we're using our own server on our own computer, we have to put our web pages in a very specific place based on the way Apache is set up. In EasyPHP, that place is called local web. So if you see here, I'm in the EasyPHP folder, in the data folder, in the local web folder. I'll be going through all of this in class. The point is, instead of htdocs, which we use in MAMP, it's local web and EasyPHP. Again, it's up to the people that put the software together. So, if we want to get our pages to go live, they must be in this directory. You'll see at this point I made a little index page, very simple, just the famous hello world, and I stored it where? I stored it in index.php, so let's start up a browser and see if we can navigate there. So where I'm going to go is simply localhost. Now, it's going to take a second because I'm on a virtual machine, so it's not super fast. But in the meantime, I will mention that you'll notice I didn't put the 8888 here. The way EasyPHP works is it uses the default port of port 80. On the Mac, as we discussed in class, it uses a special port called 8888. So that's just a configuration option that's set up by different types of amps and lamps and WAMPs. So you'll notice if I go to localhost, I get the hello world page, so it looks like everything's going well. Our job is to make a little form to collect some data. So I'm going to go to the index page, I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to go to all files, and I'm going to save this as age.html. So this is now a copy of the index page, so let's make some changes. The first change I'll make is the title, and I'll say something like, what is your age? Question mark. And instead of hello world, we're going to have to collect two things from the user. We're going to collect their name and their age. So let's first get a form, because we need a form whenever we collect data. And in a form you have two important attributes. The first one is the action. That's where are we going to send the data when this form gets submitted. The second one is the method. In this case, the method is post, and this says whenever we submit this form, we're going to send all the data to age.php using the post method. I like to close the form tag so I don't forget. So now, we're ready to start collecting some data from the user. What data do we want to collect from the user? Well, we want their name. And to do that, we're going to use an input box of type text. Remembering that this word text doesn't mean text in the classic sense of a string. It means anything the user can type on the keyboard. Well, as this course moves on, we're going to learn that we can do validations to verify, for example, if this is a number or a postal code or a phone number. So for now, text is sort of the catch-all for any type of data. We're also going to specify the name of this particular element, and I'm going to name it the name. And finally, I'll throw a BR on there so that the next line ends up on the next line. So let's copy that. Whoops. Now, I'm going to make a copy of it like I just said, and we'll do the same thing for age. So we have age, and we're going to name this what? We're going to name it the age. So now we're collecting two pieces of data. We have to allow the user to what? We have to give them a submit button, so it's an input type submit name. Not name. To put a label on a button, we use value. So value equals go. I'm going to put an exclamation, and I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to save the file. So we have a complete web page here with a form that collects a name and age, and there's an input box. So let's see how that looks in the browser. First, let's make sure it's on disk, and yep, there it is, and in our local web. So we should be able to get to it by just going to age.html. Again, this takes a moment just because we're on a virtual host, but as soon as that comes up, we should see the form. Now, if I click go, you'll see that we get our classic 404 because we're trying to go where? To age.php, but age.php does not exist yet in our local web. So our job now is to create the script. So, first thing I'm going to do, file, save as. I'm going to make sure I change this to all files, and I'm going to call it age.php. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write up here something like you are ... and I'm going to clear out the body from the form to the form. So now, if you remember in class, I talked about the fact that whenever we make a web application, we want to think of it as two distinct phases. Phase 1 is the logic or the work, and phase 2 is the presentation or the output. So our first job here is to do some work. Now our work is number 1 to figure out if there was an error. Did they leave any blanks empty? And number 2, to figure out what message we want to give them about their age. So I'm going to start by going into PHP, and I'm going to set up a couple of variables. The first variable I'm going to set up is error message, and I'm going to set it to the null string. That's going to be a collector of all of our errors. Next, I'm going to set up a flag for the error, and I'm going to set that to false. False, because at the beginning, I'm assuming I have no errors. Our job is to now go on a little bit of a research mission to find out if we actually have an error. So we do that using an if. So first, let's check the name. The first thing we have to remember is, where is the name? Well, the name is in the post of the incoming request. So we're going to go into the post array, and we're going to extract the name field. Remembering here, if I go back to the web page and I view the source, we have something called the name in the source. So that's what we want to extract, and I want to check if it's equal to what? If it's equal to the null string. If it is equal to the null string, then I'm going to append to the error message. We append with dot equals. I'm going to append what? blank name. Right? That's the error message. There's a blank name and that's no good. And I'll stick a BR there so if there's another message it'll end up on the next line. Well, since I just found an error, I know what? I know the error flag is now true. So, I checked if the name is equal to blank. If it is, I add it to the error message and I set the flag to true so we know there was an error. Well, we have to do the exact same thing for what? For the age. So we're going to check if the age is blank. And if it is, we're going to say we have a blank age. And we have an error, so the error flag is true. So now, I figured out whether or not we have an error, but we still have some work to do. We have to figure out what the age word is. But we only want to do that if what? We only want to do it if not $error flag. Because if there is an error flag, there's no need figuring out what their age word it is because we may not even know their age. So we're only going to do this bit of work when we don't have an error. So let's go here. We're going to do if what? We want to check the age, and the age is where? The age is in the post array, just like the name. So if the age is less than 45, we're going to say that the age word is equal to young! Exclamation. Now we'll also say else. Well, the else here means what? They're 45 or older, so the age word will equal wise. And we'll put a question mark there because, it might not be the case. Okay, so we've now finished the logic portion of the application. We set our error and our flag to blank and false. We then looked for some errors. If we didn't have an error, we then figured out the age word. I'm going to put a comment in here just to say the logic is done. Now it is time to do the presentation, which we also call output. So, what do we need to do the presentation? Well, let's do the error page first. So when do we want to output an error page? We want to output it when the error flag is true. Now, I don't want to do lots of echoes, so I'm simply going to leave PHP, but remember, even though I've left PHP, I'm still in the if. Now I can just write straight HTML. Please correct the following errors. Goodness gracious. And I'll pluralize it just in case. And I'll put a couple of PRs here. Now, the next thing I want to output is a PHP variable. So I'd better go back into PHP, and then I can do what? I can echo the error MSG. Now, I don't need a BR here because the blank name and the blank age both have a BR already. Okay. Now, I'm done with the error page, so I can close the if, open the else, and I want to go back into HTML again. This time I want to say, welcome somebody. Now, I could go into a full PHP, do an echo and so forth, but in this case, all I want to do is one quick little echo, and because that's such a common task, there's a shorthand notation. Less than question mark equals means echo. And I want to echo what? I want to echo the user's name, which is where? It's in the post array. So we have the name. Okay, so we've now echoed just their name. And notice the equals is like an echo. There's no PHP, there's no space, there's just an equals. We're then going to put in a comma. We're going to write you are, and now we want to say either you are young or you are wise. In general, we want to output what? We want to output the age word. We can use our shorthand notation again, $age word. And I've now done the complete success message. Welcome so-and-so, you are something. So, let's do what? We do actually have to go back into PHP one more time. Why? We need to close the else brace. Now I can close PHP and I can finish the page off with the body and the HTML. So let's recap. We start at the top of the page as HTML, then we do a bit of code which I'm calling the logic. We figure out if there's errors, we figure out the age word, and then I go into what mode? I go into the output mode. And notice in the output mode, there's a lot going on here. I'm going in and out of PHP a lot. I'm using different things. All this will be explained in the course as we go along. Okay, so let's save this. So I just use Control S and let's go back to the web. I'm going to close this view source and I'm back to my page. Click OK, I get blank name, blank age. I put in a name, Bob, and I get blank age. I put in an age, 44, but I leave out the name, and I get just the blank name. I put in a name and an age, and finally I get Bob, you are young. If we give Bob an older age, like 65, we get Bob, you are wise. Okay, so I hope that made sense. I'm going to stop the video there, and I will post the code up on Leah, and I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.